The inheritor of Empedocles' teachings was a man named Gorgias. He has become infamous through the dialogues of Plato and Aristotle, who managed to fabricate a different Gorgias, one who could be ridiculed and sacrificed at the expense of Plato's and Aristotle's own philosophical objectives. He was both respected and reviled, because he was a practitioner of rhetoric, closely linked with the practice of sophistry. We need to re-evaluate the role of Gorgias in his teachings, along with the place rhetoric and persuasion play in the role of magical practice and enchantment. Despite his playful and irreverent manner, leading some scholars to label him a nihilist, Gorgias was intimately familiar with the workings of magic and the role of the gods. Gorgias once admitted that he saw his teacher Empedocles conducting sorcery. In fact, in one of his extant fragments, Empedocles promises a pupil that, quote, "You shall learn the pharmaca there are for ills and defense against old age, and you shall stay the force of the unwearied winds which sweep over the earth and lay waste the fields with their blasts. And then, if you wish, you shall bring back breezes in requital. After dark rain, you shall cause drought for men in due season, and after summer drought cause air inhabiting tree-nourishing streams. And you shall bring from Hades the strength of a dead man." The shamanic overtones of this promise should be evident to all listeners. Empedocles was undoubtedly a goes, what can be loosely translated as a sorcerer, since he practiced the sacred art of healing, weather magic, and psychagogia. This was the teacher of Gorgias, the rhetorician. With regard to the interesting practice of psychagogia, we have records from 472 of Aeschylus's play called Persians, which was the second play in a trilogy that is now lost to us. In this drama, there is a detailed ritual of psychagogia, which may provide us with some insight into the actual procedure itself. Aeschylus also wrote a play fully devoted to this dangerous magical activity entitled Psychagogoi, which of course has also been lost to the sands of time. But before you think that I'm digressing by insisting that this isn't a video about communing with the dead in Hades, let us recall that psychagogia is also known as rhetoric. This evening, I'd like to focus on the magical power of the word, of logos, but more specifically, the logos pithanos, the persuasive logos. Whatever our cultural, religious, or philosophical inclinations, we hold aletheia, or truth, to be one of the highest aims. Our entire being, and all of our mental and emotional energies are aimed at ascertaining the truth, or at least embodying it. Or as the Irish poet W.B. Yeats, who was well versed in Neoplatonic and Pre-Socratic thought, once stated, "Man can embody truth, but he cannot know it." We all seek to grasp the truth, and yet it forever eludes our grip. We can never contain it. Everybody holds on to their truth as if they found it. None of us are immune to this self-satisfying complacency. Why search for something you already have? But what is it that you truly have? You have doxa, which means opinion. Opinion is not knowledge. In a sense, opinion operates on the surface level of knowledge, participating in its appearance, not in its essence. Here we each individually hold the beacon of light, the true aletheia that we and we alone possess, and yet we are surrounded by the darkness of lies and deceptions. The reality-bending force of propaganda and coercion, and it comes upon us with the feeling of the full force of necessity, ananke. Sometimes it is simply exhausting to interact with others and try to convince them of your own way of thinking, despite all fact, argumentation, and evidence. Many seem to be impervious to the truths that we espouse. But let us at last be honest with ourselves and honest with others. Because in a paradoxical manner, in the tradition of Parmenides and Empedocles, of whom Gorgias is yet another transmitter, the truth of the matter can only arise through deception, through enchantment. Because everything that you know or think you know participates in the elusive quality of Aphrodite's or Love's or Philote's web of enchantment. It is an unpleasant business, especially for one pure of heart and spirit, who seeks honesty in all things. But whether we like it or not, the powers of language and words are being utilized for aims both nefarious and beneficial. It is the role of the magical practitioner, supported by a strong foundation in humility before the gods, and a strong sense of virtue, that one must approach the goddess Peitho, or Persuasion, and pull back the veils of her dynamis, her activities, to see the operations of magic upon every thought and interaction you have. As Gorgias says, speech is a powerful lord. If you cannot perceive the workings of this powerful lord, you are under its mercy and command. So let us arm you with the divine levels of heightened awareness and the cunning or metis that embodies Odysseus, who was also known as Polymetis, clever in many ways. Before we continue, we are all familiar with Plato's disagreement with the sophists, and in fact went so far as to ban poetry's magical effects from his Republic. But rhetoric is not necessarily antithetical to the true and the good. A master orator, someone who is proficient in the art of rhetoric, should be able to persuade, using the verbal charms and enchantments of both Proposition A and Proposition B. As Aristotle says, but not in order to do both things, for one should not be persuaded to evil, but so that we may not be unaware of the way in which it is evil, and so that when another uses the same reasons, we can undo them. We all know the story of Helen of Sparta in the Trojan War, her love affair with Paris, who was promised the most beautiful woman in the world when he chose Aphrodite in the competition between Athena, Hera, and herself. So much ink has been spilt on attributing blame to poor Helen as the cause of the 10-year war that ended in the destruction of thousands of lives and the obliteration of Troy. In response to these accusations, Gorgias wrote the Encomium for Helen, where through his powers of rhetoric, he succeeds in removing, quote, the disgrace from a woman, ending, quote, the injustice of blame and the ignorance of opinion, while expounding on the power of argument. In another work, in defense of Palamedes, he shows that lies can defeat truth, and that we must be warned against the power of persuasion through false speech. Here are a few quotes from the Encomium. Just as Empedocles cautions in his poem, I ask you to follow very closely the words of Gorgias, lest their power and meaning fly away from you only to have you back into that magical spell of enchantment. But if it was speech which persuaded her and deceived her, not even to this is it difficult to make an answer and to banish blame as follows. Speech is a powerful lord, which by means of the finest and most invisible body effects the divinest works. It can stop fear and banish grief and create joy and nurture pity. Elsewhere he says, sacred incantations sung with words are bearers of pleasure and banishers of pain, for merging with opinion in the soul the power of the incantation is wont to beguile it and persuade it and alter it by witchcraft. There have been discovered two arts of witchcraft and magic. One consists of errors of the soul, and the other of deceptions of opinion. All who have and do persuade people of things do so by molding a false argument. For if all men on all subjects had both memory of things past and awareness of things present and foreknowledge of the future, speech would not be similarly similar, since as things are not, it is not easy for them to recall the past, nor to consider the present, nor to predict the future. So that on most subjects most men take opinion as counselor to their soul. But since opinion is slippery and insecure, it casts those employing it into slippery and insecure successes. And later, he says, the effect of speech upon the condition of the soul is comparable to the power of drugs over the nature of bodies. For just as different drugs dispel different secretions from the body, and some bring an end to disease and others to life, so also in the case of speeches, Some distress, others delight, some cause fear, others make the hearers bold, and some drug and bewitch the soul with a kind of evil persuasion. So what is this persuasion? Or more appropriately, who is persuasion? Peitho is the goddess first found in Hesiod. She is the daughter of Oceanus and Thetis, and is actually one of the goddesses who helped dress the bane of human existence, Pandora with her box of evils, the wife of Epimetheus, who was the brother of the firebringer Prometheus. Peitho does not only enchant and persuade, but she is the divine manifestation of these qualities. In order for something to be persuasive, it must be effective, and that efficacy of persuasion is the power and dynamis of Peitho. In the traditions that we are considering, she is believed to be the daughter of Aphrodite, meaning in a way that Aphrodite constellates and utilizes her dynamis to act in this world. The allure and compulsion of Aphrodite's charms have much to thank for in the agency of her daughter Peitho. But Peitho is only one half of this divine energia. Her opposite is Bia, force, or Renanke, necessity. If you will forgive me a slight diversion, the whole notion of free speech being a right is absolutely nonsensical. The freedom to speak, as in free speech, is not a right, nor is it a privilege. It is quite literally the medium by which the divine manifests. The opposition between force and word are absolutely primordial. When word fails in its ability to persuade the human soul, the only recourse it has is to the force and violence of Bia. Because Peitho is a daughter of Aphrodite, she encompasses and unites the powers of Eros and Logos. Therefore, the Greeks were right in sensing the pleasurable aspects of persuasive speech and its psychological and religious connotations with sexual pleasure. But as we've stated countless times on this channel, oppositions always belie an esoteric union and complementarity. Peitho can easily transform into the Bia and Enanke due to the fact that truth forces us out of necessity to accept her when the logos of the word is expressed. However, as observed by Aeschylus, king of Argos, when we are fearful, terror or phobos overcomes our souls, and no words can aid us in these psychological states. But like a true pharmakon, which is at once the poison and the antidote, there is a healing property to persuasive speech. In such cases, it is referred to as an iatros logos, that not only cures and relieves, but also has the power to console us and to convey valuable lessons. Despite King of Argos' observation, wrath can be allayed by the choice word. The pathos, which is associated with passion, are two words that are intimately connected with the state of illness. As Pedro Entralgo states, very intense passion is already a morbid affection, for diseases produce passions, and passions can produce diseases or express themselves by the same symptoms as the latter. In such a view, he continues, diseases, violent emotional states, as well as dreams, are expressions of pathe, or passions, produced by the daimones invading the individual reality of the one who undergoes them. The word that has substantive effects psychologically, that is, effective, is what Empedocles termed a curative word. These are what are known as epodai, charms that are sung, spells and incantations that are recited. They work as medicine works. In order to re-establish a state of harmony in conformity with the cosmos of nature, the epodai are utilized. As Empedocles states in his Purifications, or katharmoi, I know that the truth dwells in these words which I am about to utter, but the truth is hard for men, and only with labor does the offer of belief reach their soul. The incorporation of belief, pistis, into the discussion is an important one. A person can only be persuaded of an argument if they possess belief or faith or trust, all encompassed by the word pistis, in order to accept what is being said as true. The persuasive power of Peitho operates on opinions, doxai, as opposed to objective truths. But belief is also derived from the same root. Gorgias says, just as some medicines eliminate one humor from the body, other medicines another, and some free from disease while others take away life, so too do some words grieve, others cheer, others frighten, others inflame him who listens to them, and others, finally, with effectively malign persuasion, poison and bewitch the soul. As mentioned earlier, persuasion can be either harmful through deceit or beneficial and advantageous if it seeks the good of the man persuaded. It really all depends on the intention in which it is used. When someone enters a therapist's or a physician's office, the wrong approach would be for the practitioner to say that the pain the patient feels resulting from the disease or illness is illusory or not real. Sensation, whatever it may be, whether physical or emotional, is always true, as in, it is always real, at least at the subjective level. Illness and health are concepts that are related to something else, and that something else is the physis, the true nature and natural spontaneity of the person who experiences. In this sense, thinking is a type of feeling. Or to follow Jung's categorization of the four psychological types, although he distinguished between thinking and feeling as opposed to one another, he categorized them both under rational functions, assuming that we are referring to active feelings versus passive feelings. He opposed thinking and feeling to sensation and intuition, which he understood as irrational functions. The magician, rhetorician, orator, politician, or anyone for that matter, can use the persuasive word, the logos pithanos, to either inflame the pathos and illnesses and passions of the people or allay their fears and anxieties to the healing word. This is a kalesis that is considered divine. Wandering sorcerers or seers, manteis or iatromantes, can travel around the world just like Empedocles healing through a carefully articulated phrase of Homer, or Epimenides purifying the city of Athens through sacrifice in psychagogia and communication with the dead. The ancient Greek conception of guilt acts as a contagion that can pass down hereditary lines, so that even people born innocent or free of guilt, ataikia, are made to suffer the results of the family's cursed bloodline. One of the purifying ways the Greek tragedy demonstrates a cure for such maladies is through mania, which destroys the stain of guilt that is inherited in a sort of mad catharsis. But rather than relying on the mania as the sole remedy, we turn back again to the enchanting charm of the word that acts like a talisman, an epode. Pseudo-Plutarch states that to effect a change in the soul or body of the listener or recipient, it is important for one to obtain a knowledge of their soul's eidos, its aspects, as well as the appropriately timed kairos, which is an understanding of the right moment that reflects the right mood for full acceptance of the epode. Remember, the epode charm needs to come before the medicine of the pharmakon can be implemented, in order for it to take its full healing or harming effects. In a way, the charm of the carefully timed word primes the body for the medicine. If you have not established pistis, you will not cure nor enchant. What the proem of Parmenides depicting his journey to the netherworld to encounter the goddess of the dead demonstrates is that language is not meant simply to be read. Reading is a later development. Language is performative, meaning that it accomplishes what it says. Think about a mantra. When one says Om, it does not indicate or explain or tell something. It does something. Through sympathetic magic, it alters the structure of reality. The difference between a sorcerer, magician, or iatromantes is that they do not use the doxai of mere mortals who use words with no forcefulness or powers inherent to them. But by expressing the truthful word, it takes a life of its own and realizes itself in the act of articulation. The word contains true pistis. After all, Peitho is truth's companion, and deception is also in her battery of tools to use as well. It is through the deceiving of the deceptive that one can intuit the truth. in order for completeness to be truly complete, it must also include illusion. And that is how the sorcerer uses the power to heal and to destroy. Take care for now.